Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to perform maintenance on the SV06 linear rods. To start, raise the gantry out of the way and turn the printer off. Grab a clean, dust-free cloth and put some IPA on it. Use this cloth to clean the exposed rods of any grease and dirt. Try and get as much as you can. We'll move the bed in a second. If you see that your cloth is getting dirty, switch to a different one. Now that we've got it clean, we need to dry it off. Let's get another clean cloth. Get as much of that IPA off as you can. Grab your superlube. I'm using 21030 here. And we just want to use a little bit. Less is more here. We want to create a thin line, thin sheen all over the exposed rod. Coat it pretty good. Try not to get too much on there because we'll just have to clean it off later. But you want to coat the entire rod. Now, do not get this on your bed. Now we need to move the bed out of the way and get the other side that was covered. Again, do not get this on your bed. Clean off the exposed rods just like we did before with some IPA. Use a high content IPA, 90 or better. It dries faster. Now we want to dry them off. It's just like we did before. I'm going to remove the bed. You don't want to get any grease on that bed. You'll need a new bed if you do. Again, we're just going to put a thin sheen on all of the exposed rod. On this side, you don't have to go as far back because it's, you know, the way the bearings are done, it's like a triangle under the bed. So this side doesn't go back as far. You stop at the motor. Coat it well. Now we're going to move the bed back and forth. Do it kind of slow. You don't want to rush it. These bearings have a oil seal on them, or dust shield, whatever you want to call it. We're trying to get some of this grease into that bearing. And we're also trying to work it into the rods themselves. So just back and forth. And you'll notice it's starting to build up where the bearings are pushing it to the one side or the other. We're going to spread that out push it along. Do the same on the other side. Redistribute that as much as you can. Again, those dust seals on the bearings, it pushes it. Do the same in the back. Again, you just want a really thin amount of grease on these rods. Try not to get any grease on the magnet as well. And just keep spreading it back out. Do this several times. Now that we've done that several times, we're going to clean off the little bit of excess at the ends of the rods. Just wipe off the remaining. Do it on both sides. And that's it for the y-axis. We're going to do the same thing on X. Clean it off with a clean rag. It's lint free. I only use lint free here. Put some IPA on it and rub it back and forth to get all that old grease and dirt off. Be very careful of the belt. You really don't want to get anything on that belt. You especially don't want to get grease on that belt. Now we want to dry it off. Now, like we did before, we're going to get a little bit of grease on our finger. We're going to put a light sheen on both of these rails. Again, being very careful not to get any of it on that belt. But get a good sheen on it. While you're doing this, you also want to feel for any type of imperfection or defect in the rod. Now we need to move the gantry, or the hot end. Like we did before, we got to clean this section that was covered by the hot end, the carriage. Then we need to dry that really well. Now we want to put our grease on it. Blend in both sides. Again, you're using very little grease here. Not a whole lot, being careful not to get it on the belt. Now we need to move the carriage back and forth like we did with the bed. Again, just take it really easy, really slow. We're not in a rush here. Trying to work some of that into the bearings itself. Get past the dust shield. Into the metal. Back and forth a couple times. And like we did before, we're going to redistribute. And being careful not to get it on the belt. Once again, back and forth. Spread it back out. Get nice and slow. One last time. And like we did before, we're going to wipe off the excess. If you leave the excess on here, it's going to collect dust and dirt. Nothing good. Don't scrub it clean, but get off the excess amounts. Now we need to move the gantry out of the way so we can work on Z. At this point, you really need to start your printer and do this with the printer itself. Don't try and move this thing up by hand. Don't ever try and move it up by hand. Now we're out of the way. Same thing we've been doing. We're going to clean both of the rods. We're only doing the rods here. Leave the lead screws alone. And just like the belts, we do not want to get grease on the lead screws. Wiping down, we'll go with some IPA, get all that old grease off. Mine was pretty dirty. And come back and dry them off. Again, we're not trying to grease the lead screws, just the rods. Now everything's clean. Just like we did before, nice thin coat. Just put a sheen on it. Should dullen up the finish. And again, you're checking for any type of defect. This is the time to catch those problems. Just a nice sheen. Again, less is more. Now we got to move it down. Again, let the printer do this for you. Again, now's a good time to inspect things as it's moving. Now that's out of the way, let's clean the top. Now, like we did with the bed, you don't have to go all the way up because it's not going to go all the way up. If you get some up there, it's okay. We'll clean it off later. Again, leave the lead screws alone. This maintenance is just for the linear rods. Dry it off. You really want to get all that IPA off of there. Like we did before, now we're going to do the newly exposed pieces. Again, try not to get any of this grease on that lead screw. Just a little bit. Now I got to move the gantry up. This one takes a little bit longer because we can't move it by hand. But like we did before, we need to go all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, just to try and get some of that worked into the bearings, worked into the metal. You're going to want to do this a couple of times. Redistribute. Just like before, those dust seals will push a lot of it to the end. Spread it back out. Try and work in as much as we can. And we want to leave a nice thin layer on each of these rods. Then we're going to wipe off the excess. Now for you wanted to go up and down several times. I cut some of that out for you. But do it 3 or 4 times. Wipe off our excess. And that's really it. Now you should do this about every month, more if it's in dust.